So today we're going to talk about recharging your automotive air conditioner. I've got my handy MrZ Auto Recharge Kit, and it contains everything we're going to need to do this job. First of all, why are we going to recharge our air conditioner ourselves? Well, if your air conditioner is not running right, warm air is coming out, it's supposed to be cold, one of the easiest things that we can do to do that repair right away is to add a can of refrigerant. And if that solves your problem and you keep it running the rest of the season that way, then you can avoid a very costly repair bill. Well, then let's talk about the easiest way to do that and the safest way to do that. And again, this kit contains everything we're going to need to get started. It contains a pair of safety glasses. We want to make sure we have our eyes covered at all times in case anything should fly out of here that we don't want in our eye. It's also going to contain a pair of gloves. And these gloves are nice coated gloves to keep our hands not only safe from the grease and dirt of inside our engine hood, but it's also going to keep our hands protected by any of the chemicals that might come out of that air conditioning system, like the oil or refrigerant spray that might somehow get on your fingers. We're going to keep them nice and safe with our gloves. Okay, so now we actually need the tools to do the job. The kit contains a charging hose, and this charging hose has a fitting on one end that will go to the factory fitting on your car, and a fitting on the other end that will go to the can of refrigerant. Now, the can of refrigerant you're going to get with this kit is just straight refrigerant R134a, packaged by National Refrigerants, good high quality brand packaged right here in the United States, and it does not contain any additives. You're going to see a lot of products on the market that might contain an oil additive. They're going to claim it works colder. Basically, they just clean your system up a little bit and don't really give you that much benefit. This is straight R134a as recommended by your original equipment manufacturer, and that's all you need to put in the system. All right, so now let's walk through the steps of how we're going to accomplish this charge. Our can of refrigerant has a nice seal on the top that needs to be pierced by the can fitting, by the can valve fitting. Now, there is a plunger that contains a sharp end, and that sharp end is going to pierce through the can, but only when we want it to. So first we want to make sure that that valve is all the way unscrewed so that end is not sticking out, and then we can put it onto the can. We're going to screw the can onto the fitting, and don't make it too tight right away because we're going to do a little bit of a purge there when the time comes. Now I've got my hose onto my can ready to go. Where am I going to connect this hose to? I've got to go find the port. Now we're looking for the port on the low side or the suction side of the system because that's not going to generate as much pressure as the high side when the car is running, and it's going to draw the refrigerant out of the can into the system. So I want to check my tubing, find my compressor in the front of the engine, and check the tubing in both directions to make sure I can find the fittings. And here I have nice shiny tubing down in the car, and I can see my silver air conditioning hoses here. And I don't see a fitting right here, so I'm going to trace the lines back towards the firewall, and yep, here's a fitting right down in here. And that fitting has an L on it, which means it's the low side fitting. And I see another fitting over here. I'm going to come back across this way, and yes, this fitting here is on the smaller piece of tubing, and it has an H on it. So let's just real quick take a look at the high side fitting. If I were to take this off and try to get this hose attached to the high side fitting, we're going to find that the fitting for my hose is just too small. It's not going to fit onto this no matter how much I try. So it's not going to fit onto there. I'm not going to be able to charge through the high side fitting, and that's exactly why it's a different size. And let's go back to the low side. Now, I'm going to want to take the cap off and put it somewhere safe. Make sure you don't lose this. Now, in order to get this fitting onto the low side fitting, I'm going to need to squeeze up on the ring, put the fitting over, the hose fitting over the fitting on the car, and let go, and it will snap back into place and grab that fitting. So try that now. Okay, it's good and tight, will not let go. At this point, the fitting in the car has been opened, and refrigerant is charged up into the hose from the car. That's a good thing. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to unscrew this can just a little bit. Remember, we haven't pierced the can yet, and you're going to hear a little hiss. And when I hear the little hiss, that means that refrigerant has come through my hose, pushing the air in the hose out. That's a good thing. That means we're not going to put air into the car. And now I've retightened my can. Okay, so the next step now is that we need to actually pierce the can. However, by closing this valve in and piercing the can, we're actually closing the valve. So again, we're not going to allow refrigerant to flow until we start the car. So let me just pierce the can. So now we're ready to start the car, and then as soon as I start the car, I'll reopen the valve, and that will allow the refrigerant to flow in. We turn the AC on and make sure the fan is set to max and the air conditioning is set to max. So at this point, I'm going to want to open the valve and let the refrigerant flow. Now I can feel the can getting cold. It's a good thing I'm wearing these gloves, keeping my hand nice and warm here. I'm going to want to shake the can around just to disturb the refrigerant enough to keep the heat going into the refrigerant. And every once in a while I'm just going to shake the can, but otherwise I'm going to leave it here upright. So this is going to take a good 15 minutes for that can to empty now. As we're drawing refrigerant out of the can, it's boiling in there and getting colder and colder. So it needs to pick up heat from the engine compartment, and every once in a while, I'm going to give it a shake, and that'll pick up some extra heat. But it's going to take a good 15 minutes. Be patient. Let it do it. Let it run its course. Every once in a while, you want to check it. When it stops being cold and it feels like it's empty, then we're ready to go on to the next step. So now that we notice that the can doesn't feel as cold anymore and it feels pretty empty, we're ready to close the can, and then we'll turn off the motor. So now we're done. I'm going to have to take this hose off, but we might get a little bit of a hiss. Shouldn't be much, but you should notice a little bit of a hiss, and it should stop. That means we've resealed pretty well. So I'm going to reach down, get the fitting, and off it comes. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to take the fitting off the can. Now remember, we just had this hooked up to the system, and the system was under some pressure on the low side, so there's still a little bit of pressure in here. When you take the fitting off, don't be surprised to hear a little bit of a hiss. That's the last remaining residual amount of refrigerant in the can under pressure. It'll come out through the top of the can, so just be careful with it. That's normal. Well, now we want to quick check and make sure the air conditioner is getting colder like it's supposed to. Make sure it feels pretty good. And I'm getting good operation all around. So it looks like we've done our job. Okay, now we're done with our refrigerant recharge. Make sure you do put this in an approved recycling stream, and it can be recycled anywhere. Metal cans are recycled. Now we want to make sure we save our gear. Our handy MrZ kit, again, comes with 2 cans of refrigerant. Maybe this car needed 2 cans of refrigerant, maybe, luckily it didn't. You can always use this for your friends, your neighbors, your family. Now that you know how to do the recharge, you can get more refrigerant, and we sell just the refrigerant cans in 6-packs or 12-packs and single cans, so you can always get more refrigerant. You've got your safety equipment, you've got your charging hose, you're now ready to go out and help your friends, family keep their air conditioners up and running. One little piece of advice though, if you are putting a lot of refrigerant in a short time frame, if it needs another can in a couple of weeks, you do have a larger leak, you might want to take care of that by getting it repaired at a repair shop. But this keeps you going the rest of the season. You've saved a lot of money over a professional repair. Do it yourself is a very well-established, good way to keep your car running, and you've got everything you need in this MrZ repair kit.